Hi there, I'm David Batsoffen, and I host a travel blog called Travel and Things. And today we're talking about books, and specifically the new annual that Zapiro has just brought out called Do the, how do we pronounce this correctly? The Macorona. And from Cape Town, the man himself, Jonathan Zapiro, or Jonathan Shapiro, otherwise known to the general public as Zapiro. Jonathan, how are you doing, firstly?
I'm well, thanks, David. Lovely to be with you. I'm doing not brilliantly in the whole lockdown thing, but I think probably better than some people. I mean, some people have had it worse and with the actual illness and all kinds of deprivation in lockdown. But as a cartoonist, actually doing very well. Thank you. There's been we are used to, as cartoonists, working with terrible things that we've somehow got to translate into something else and into something that could be funny or just interesting or spark debate or join debates. And in that sense, as a cartoonist, it's been quite a fruitful year.
The one thing I have noticed, you haven't put a shower head in the virus. Why not?
Oh, the shower head is all over the place, but in a way, I could sort of gratuitously put shower heads all over. They do refer to Zuma and the sort of Zuma connection. And so now I've often had the shower in connection with Ace Magashula because there's a strong connection there. And with other people, Donald Trump got a shower because he had the famous episode with the golden shower stuff for the Russian sex workers. And I thought Donald Trump and Jacob Zuma are very similar kinds of personalities as presidents of countries who are corrupt and who are opportunist and who are populist and who just awful personalities. Like Putin and Bolsonaro, people like that. So yeah, Trump got a shower, but I thought the virus, that was pushing it.
This is, correct me if I'm wrong, this is your 25th of your annuals. You started in 1996, so this makes this number 25. Is there anything looking back on those that you're sorry you didn't put in, or that in retrospect you've gone, really, I actually included that particular cartoon? Maybe I shouldn't have?
No, probably not in terms of the annuals, in terms of what I've put in that I don't think I've put in things that I should have left out. I mean, even including some things that have brought me serious issues like, death threats and whatever. I feel it's been an important thing for me to actually do that. I think that in the first, you mentioned that my first annual was 1996. Probably I should have done an annual in 1995, but the first one is always difficult to get off the ground and all that. And so that annual consisted of cartoons selected from 2.5 years worth of work. And in those days, I was doing about 6 cartoons a week. So the first annual, I could have put 2 together. And I left a huge number of cartoons that I really rate out of the first one. After that, I've really been very careful to include best of and to work with. These days, I work with Mike Wills. We do the selection together, and we and he writes the captions. I have an input. But it's actually wonderful working with somebody like that who's a writer, who's funny as well, writes about politics, writes about sport, knows a lot. And, he's got a good head. So it's nice working with him.
If you think about Apocalypse Now, I don't know how many years after the original movie they brought out the director's cut, redux, and then added back in all the stuff that was cut out, and it added in hours to a movie that already was too long, and contained Marlon Brando, I think, who was paid by the word or by the second, which is why he took so long. But the reason, the long way around that particular statement is there going to be a redux at some particular point? Are we going to see annual redux rather than 2021, perhaps?
I have actually done 4 other books, and they are in many ways what you're talking about. But each one has got its own particular reason for being and its own particular kind of theme. The first I did was the Mandela Files, which is a large hardcover with about 100,000 words as well. And it was all about Madiba, his influence on me, the struggle, all kinds of things. You know, cartoons that he had responded to, or the issues that he was connected with. So it was a wonderful book to do, and I had the fantastic opportunity to actually present it to him. He was not in the best mental state all the time, but he responded incredibly well, and looked at one cartoon with him which was about his life and how he had appeared in all the different cartoons in so many different guises. And he was, oh, that's what I want. Oh, that's what I love here. And it was great.
Jonathan, we can do this interview if you want. We can both do the voice, so we can interview each other.
Absolutely. There's so many people. I mean, I think I got in there early, and I was able to do that early. But these days, it's sort of, I see you do one. There's a fellow cartoonist in Nigerian, and a British Nigerian, who does a great Mandela impersonation. And many people do it.
His voice was actually very easy, relatively easy to do, unlike our current president, or for that matter, your favorite, Mr. Potato Head.
No, definitely. One thing that I did actually note about Jacob Zuma when we were doing, when I was involved near the beginning with the Zanews, the puppets, I have my figurines behind me, which are the 3D things. I love doing 3D work with people. These were not part of the puppets, but we also did we did this wonderful, I mean, the puppeteers, the puppet makers did fantastic puppets, and I was involved with that. And in the early days of Jacob Zuma, even before he was president, I was listening to a lot of interviews, and people didn't know his stuff as well as I did. So I was actually able to point out the throat clearing, that that thing that he does. And
I'd forgotten about that.
And the laugh, the when he gets nervous. And so we were first up, before before anything, because I listened to cadences, and I listened to. I'm not saying I can do a great Jacob Zuma, but I was always looking for. I've always been looking for aspects of what people do. I mean, the Madiba, the dance. I also, when he started getting up and doing that stiff dance thing, I kind of got that in 1994, in the year that he did that. I started making that a sort of a theme of the cartoons and of the expression of Madiba. So, in fact, I love that kind of thing.
We're talking about your other annuals. There they are, of course, on the back of this particular one, of the new one. I've forgotten. I'm sitting here with it in my lap. The whole reason for us chatting today was because of this, and we've sort of gone off at a tangent. And before we get into this, I just want to ask, what is going to happen now when the Trumpster finally gets dragged by SEAL Team 4 out of the White House, kicking and screaming, with Melania going, oh, thank goodness I don't have to do Christmas next year. And you've lost Jacob Zuma, when eventually he wanders off into the wilderness, into his 243 million rand home that we can't talk about because it's a national key point. What are you then? Who are you then going to pick on?
That I remember the first time that people asked me about that was about P.W. Botha. Right. I said almost the same thing as I'm saying now, that firstly, I'm thrilled when somebody like that goes, because as a South African, I want him to go.
Yeah.
Secondly, he's not lost. He's still there as an emblem. I mean, but for me, P.W. Botha was a few different things. Firstly, it was the finger. And that was something that I had been doing, and so had other people. I'd done cartoons where the giant statue of his finger is the whole cartoon. I'd done cartoons where he does this, and then the finger of God, not that I'm religious, comes down and kind of like warns him off. I'd done these fingers a smoking gun. I've done, and that theme stayed in the cartoons as a representation of krachtdadigheid of the old South Africa, etc., and it still crops up now. And then, people ask me about Buthelezi, and then people ask me about George W. Bush or Manto Shabalala Msimang, or and then Jacob Zuma, and now Trump. These are
always
all people
somebody
I want to see the back of. And of course, people also ask me about Madiba, as they ask every cartoonist about Madiba, even the great people. And Madiba also appears sometimes in the clouds, sometimes as the conscience, even with the arch when, Madiba's gone and the arch is still with us, but the two of them are sometimes this moral conscience. So in cartoons, in this parallel universe that we create, the good and the bad still exist, and they're still part of us.
In fact, you've used one cartoon like that, and in fact, that's the cartoon that I'm referring to, where Madiba features, because you've used a quotation of his, which is, after climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb. And it was looking together with Cyril at the bell curve from COVID.
Yes, and the hill that they're standing on, you'll see there it says freedom. So they've we've climbed that hill, got to freedom, and now suddenly there's this other unexpected hill, and that's the graph, that we'd suddenly become familiar with. And that's there you see exactly what I was trying to say there. Cyril and Madiba is standing behind him as if the two people exist in the same universe, but it's the parallel universe. Still our symbol, and that's exactly what I try and do often.
Take me through the process of putting a book like this together, specifically now in a time of Corona, when people have lost loved ones. They're looking for something to make them laugh, but maybe they don't really. The laugh is a little forced because they think, what will other people say?
That's a very good question, and even the title. I thought of that title early on because I did a cartoon which I felt was the first really good cartoon that went viral, so to speak. It went all over the place, and when the original meaning of going viral was a virus, then it went to the metaphorical meaning, and then it's kind of going back to being the virus again. So there's a sort of full circle there. And that cartoon was one that went all over the world, and it's one that I love. But when I thought of putting the book together, and I thought that's the obvious title, Do the Macorona, I did wonder about that for a while. I was thinking, well, are there people for whom it's too painful? But I have to think about it and think, well, it's one of those things that there is pain in it, but there's also laughter and satire and cerebral thought, all kinds of things. And I thought people would understand it. It seems to have been very popular already to have this.
When you took the name to your publisher, who are Jacana Press, there they are. Give them their little bit of fame for one moment. I love Jacana. I think they do great work. They really are. They really do. And I think they're one of the few publishing houses in South Africa that get what publishing is still all about. Do you have to run everything by them, or do they trust you enough now that you literally hand them the book and go, it's done, it's finished, thank you very much, I'll see you in 2021?
No, pretty much the second. In terms of titles and things, I certainly run that by them in the same way as if I have an important cartoon that may have some legal implications or whatever, I'll run certain things by my editors, for whether it was newspapers or online. But with the title and the title of and cover of a book, I certainly talk about that with, in my case, it's Bridget Impey at Jacana, and I've had a long relationship with Bridget through a number of publishing houses, and I mean, we've been at Jacana now for well over a decade now. But yeah, she always, there've been one or two book titles and covers where it has been an issue. I'll tell you one, for example. Just a few years back, there you see Dead President Walking.
Oh, yeah.
If you see that one, I don't know how well you can see that.
There we go. I've got it up here as well.
Yeah, it did. That's the next one, the one behind that. Yes, there we go. And there's an image that you can't see very easily, but Dead President Walking, and there's a kind of dripping letters, and it's a real zombie thing with this hole in Jacob Zuma. There's these cannonballs that have been shot through him, and his eyes hanging out, and his brain is open, and you know, that's a book that you're going to put in someone's Christmas stocking. Or and Bridget said, "Are you sure about this?" And I said, "Bridget, this is 2016." I said, "People are angry. People." That book it sold very well, and people understood it. But every now and then you have something like that. You know, we were in deep crisis, and the book had to reflect that.
You know, talking about that, and I just got to try and find it because I did tag it. You give Jacob Zuma a sick note for the Zondo Commission, and Shapiro Shaker's signed.
That was fun.
I always laugh because he got out on a medical parole because he was terminally ill, and he's been terminally. I think he's now in the Guinness Book of World Records as the longest terminally ill patient in the history of terminally ill patients who can still play golf.
Absolutely, and this one, I mean, all these different things: acute excusemia and truthophobia, bullshitosis, and Basasa virus. All these different things that he's suffering from the following. And it's really fun, and people love that stuff. I mean, that cartoon was one of the most popular in this year's collection.
Right.
It really also kind of went viral. I mean, there were people that I got messages from all over the world from people who'd seen that cartoon.
Yeah.
Which was fun.
Let me toss something at you from left field, Jonathan. Tell me about Jonathan Zapiro I want to do it now. Jonathan Shapiro in Matric. If I was to look at any of your exercise books from Matric, would I find them filled with scribbles and cartoons? Did you know all those years ago that you would one day become Zapiro?
I didn't know I'd become Zapiro. I knew that I would be a cartoonist of some sort, and then I actually lost confidence and went to study architecture. But from the age of about 8 or 9, I felt I would be a cartoonist. At that stage, my aspirations were strangely to be an assistant. I thought I'll learn from. I wanted to go and assist Hergé, who did Tintin.
Or I see Tintin behind you.
Oh yeah, Tintin is still a huge influence, and I wanted to go also to maybe assist Charles Schulz, who did Peanuts. Absolutely brilliant, influential, wonderful stuff. I mean, I was just thinking of the moon landing the other day when there was a parallel set of cartoons where Snoopy on the Sopwith camel was he was landing Sopwith camel on the moon, and it was just groundbreaking, brilliant stuff, both of them, and then by the time I was in standard 6, grade 8, I wasn't Zapiro, but I was Zap, and the reason I was Zap was there was another Shapiro in the school. He was in Matric, and his parents had come from, or grandparents had come from Hungary. So his name was spelt SZ, APR, like Zabo, Shapiro, but SZH. And the guys in my class thought I was his brother, and they called me Zap. And I thought that's a nice name for my cartoons. I signed it Zap, and I signed it like that for 10 years, but 12 years, I think, because I met my wife in 1984, and she saw me once sign one of my early, really hard-hitting, vicious struggle cartoons, and it actually had police killing somebody in the cartoon, and I signed it Zap, and she thought that was a little bit flippant, and so I said, yeah, you're probably right. We thought it was maybe a bit like a California surfboard logo, and and I then tried to, in one afternoon, to find a better way of signing, and in 1984, one afternoon, it suddenly became Zapiro, and it's been like that, and
ever since.
known.
Just talking about those early cartoons of yours, have you still got the originals of your very first cartoon?
Pretty much so, yes. And you actually, what I didn't answer was my book about at school, the margins of the books. Yes,
sorry,
I didn't write in textbooks. I never wrote. I was.
No, that's why I did say I was very specific about exercise books.
Exactly. In my exercise book, especially in things like history, I used to love thinking about the absurd scenarios. You know, I don't know if you remember, there was a book, 1066 and all that, which was a thin little book about British history done in kind of satirical form. And I was into that sort of thing. So I would kind of, when we heard about whether it was crusades or whatever, maybe a little bit of nascent political stuff, I would do a kind of absurd version of these things in the margins of the books. I'll never forget, though, once there was a teacher who was actually a geography teacher, and the guys used to call him, I don't know, he had some kind of nickname for him, and I drew him as a Neanderthal. And he looked a bit Neanderthal, and he was relatively mild-mannered, but he used to every now and then lose his cool. And he came past and he saw this drawing, and he absolutely flipped out. And I must say, I was regarded as usually a fairly well-behaved kid, but I did see then and a number of times later that the cartoons that I did, whether or not I was well-behaved or not, if I did a harsh satirical cartoon, I could get a rise out of anyone. And it just almost kind of
stayed with you, has it? Yeah. You remind me of a friend that I was at school with. He hated maths. So for, I think it was the matric prelims, he wrote Ode to a Maths paper. And he wrote a poem about maths and handed it in. And the resultant mark was, if this was English, you would have gotten A. It's unfortunately maths, so you failed.
Oh boy, yeah, I kind of recognize that.
Yeah, so back to the book. Your publishers are going, talk about that book. Forget that backstory, people. No, that's what these In Conversations With are exactly all about. They're just us having chats, and we'll dip in and out of the book. So do you have a favorite cartoon in this one?
I actually do. Well, I have two favorites, but one of them really is, well, I'll tell you that one favorite is one that I gather you also picked up, which is the Asterix versus
Asterix,
Pandemics.
Yeah. I had,
because yes, that one is one that I've got. I'll show it
there
here
we go,
already.
Yeah.
And this is one where it was right at the beginning of lockdown, and as we were about to go into global lockdown, the great Albert Uderzo of Asterix, the artist of Asterix, died. And so it's there, you see all together, all apart, hold it off till the magic potion's ready.
Yeah.
And the magic potion is down there. It's the
Getafix's magic potion, yeah.
The vaccine. And they're busy making that vaccine. So it all kind of held together, but also it's got a little tribute down at the bottom,
yeah,
about this generosity of Uderzo to us. So I had a connection. I found Uderzo when I was 21, when I was not yet a cartoonist. I was still doing architecture. I was wanting to be a cartoonist, and I got lost in Paris trying to find his house. Arrived 11 o'clock at night. Can you believe it? At his apartment.
Did you knock on the door?
And I rang his doorbell at 11 o'clock at night in autumn, not in summer. So nobody around, not people out on the streets, anything. And he opened the door and he let me in. He didn't even speak English. We had this awkward few moments where he was telling his wife something about Afrique du Sud, which he understood.
Yeah.
And then his daughter arrived, and she'd been out, and she spoke English, and she translated. I was there for about 15 minutes, and he looked through my drawings, and he said, "Très bien." So I never forgot that. And he was somebody who, I mean, that's one of the things that I kind of feel helped me get the courage to actually drop everything, become a cartoonist. So that's one.
One of my favorite cartoonists is Gary Larson. And in fact, when I had my first tattoo done, which is on my back, it's part of a Gary Larson cartoon.
If it got you started, got me started, or probably got 90% of the people who are viewing and listening to this started, everybody's going to have 2 or 3 or 4 favorite Gary Larsons. And that's how emblematic and the iconic he is. Really phenomenal.
But as they say in the classics, back to you. Cartoons like this, which can take you longer to read than the Sunday Times nowadays, because there's nothing in the Sunday Times. Since Barry Wronger left and Spit and Polish finished, there is nothing in the Sunday Times anymore. You can do that in literally 30 seconds. But a cartoon like this, and this is not your first, that you've got to sit down and literally take your time and peruse each and every one of these little titles that you've got stashed away in here, and chortle while you do it.
Yeah, well, thanks. I'll say that at the top, you'll see that it says, you see, during lockdown, it was during what were we then? I think by then at level 3, and you couldn't get books online. That was one of the things you couldn't get. All of a sudden, there was this provision that you were going to be able to get books from Exclusive Books, but how were they going to be delivered? Uber Eats, which was hilarious. So it was Richard Poplack at the Daily Maverick, one of the great minds there. I mean, there's such brilliant, funny, powerful writers at Daily Maverick, which is where I am. So not just a plug for Daily Maverick, it's probably one of the best places for good journalism, reporting and commentary that you're going to find anywhere in the world. And all the cartoons this year are from there, because that's where I am. But what Richard Poplack said, I wonder what kind of books would you get from that arrangement, Exclusive Books, and he suggested something that had it was a book title that had been sort of altered to be something about eating, and everyone started riffing. And it was on the Daily Maverick WhatsApp group, which I'm on, and immediately I sent a couple of my suggestions, and then everyone started, and people were, so it was a 2 or 3 day riff on there, and within about half an hour, I said, please, everybody, can I use this stuff in a cartoon? There's a cartoon here. And they said, sure. And so after about 2.5 days, I kind of called the thing. And then I said, I started putting the cartoon together. And it was one of there's probably about 1/5 of the titles that are my own. And about 4/5 are the ones that came out of that. And then I grouped them carefully. And, there's a South African section, and then there's also a section at the end where you start overeating, which is really fun.
I mean,
I really enjoyed it.
Lord of the Fries, Scone with the Wind, I love. These sort of things remind me, there was an interview that Robin Williams did with Michael Parkinson, and Stephen Fry. And if you haven't watched it, watch it, because Stephen Fry and Parky give up eventually and just let Robin talk on. And he refers to the fact that every movie ever brought out, there is a porn version, like Saving Ryan's Privates was the one that I always remember. Every big mainstream movie has a porn version.
That's fantastic.
Whether it actually exists in reality or like your cartoon, these particular books, Scone with the Wind, or what is the other one, Lord of the Fries, the books don't really exist. But if you read through these, they read funny. You go, okay, I could do that. Or I would go out and buy Lord of the Fries, because I want to know. Many years ago, Victor Strugo, who you may remember as being with the Saturday Star, he was a restaurant reviewer, if I remember correctly. He and I were going to hire a limo, dress in tuxedos, and go around the chip shops to see who did the best slop chips in Joburg. So we could have written Lord of the Fries.
Yeah, no, of course. And as I say, there's so many the funny people who put their minds to that particular cartoon. That's why the quality of the stuff. And then I did the grouping and the
No, there's a lot of work. It's like putting an art exhibition together. You've got to curate it properly, Jonathan.
Yeah.
How
can I sorry,
yes.
I was going to talk about one other favorite.
Yes,
I said
please.
my favorites were probably the Asterix one and one other one.
Mm.
And that one is the one where it's the one that gives rise to the title of the book. And it was from the very beginning of the pandemic. And if you like, I can sing it for you, because I love singing it. And it goes like this: going viral, which, as I said, has got its circular thing of literal and then metaphorical and back to the Macorona. And it goes, I'll hold this up and I'll sing it. Keep your social distance around about a meter. Don't shake hands, use the elbow or the feeter. Avoid big crowds, you should rather be a loner.
Ay, Macorona.
Sneeze into your elbow, it's essential hygiene. If you're symptomatic, maybe self-quarantine. It's all gone global from Beijing to Barcelona.
Ay, Macorona.
Clean hands often with hand sanitizer. Listen to official medical advisor. Ignore fake news when it pings on your phone.
Ay, Macorona.
Conspiracies, forget them, and religious polemic. It's not God's fury, it's a viral pandemic. Don't trust Trump, he's a fucking morona.
Ay, Macorona. Jonathan, it's so great to chat to you. It really is. I mean, we could go on chatting for hours, but what I want to firstly, the book Zapiro, Do the Macorona. It's published by Jacana. Where can people find it? Online, at exclusive books? Will Uber Eats bring you a copy?
That's probably the only thing that Uber Eats won't bring. No, well, I suppose they bring, if you order it, exclusive book stuff through Uber Eats, yes, they will. So in fact, they will. I never actually thought about that. And my book is now one of those books that you can get. I should have an eating version of that as well.
You should indeed. Comes with a pizza.
Yeah. So of course you can get it. You can certainly get it online through all sorts of platforms, including exclusive books online. But
Take a lot, Loot, all of those.
Zapiro.com, my site, and yes, and Take a Lot. But you can also anyone can pick it up at exclusive books or at any of the other. CNA got lots all over the country, and any of the major bookshop, Wordsworth, all of them. Yeah.
A final question for you, and a question that I ask authors is and it's slightly different for you as a cartoonist. So what I normally ask authors is, how do you know when you go the end and you either stop typing or you put your pen down and you go, that's it, book done? In your instance, how do you come up with the final cartoon? How do you go, that's the cartoon I want to end this book with. Thank you very much, Jacana. I'm sending it through to you. Do your worst.
There's a twofold answer to that. One of them is that I'm always pushing the limits and saying, I still want to add a few more cartoons in there. I think we need a few more, etc., etc. So, and Mike, who I work with, Mike Wills and Jacana, are saying to me, it's enough. We've got to get it to the printers. We've got to be on time in the shops, all that sort of stuff. So that's the first part of it. The second thing is that sometimes I do find a way to add a couple more cartoons in, but I've already decided that this particular cartoon is the best one to end it on. And in this instance, I felt I could have done one about the virus, but I also felt bringing it back to South Africa itself, this cartoon about Ace Magashule and where things are going. And as they started to close in a little bit on Ace, it had to be one or the other. And I decided that one was the one to end the book on. Yeah.
And I think on that note, we're going to end our chat. So the book is Zapiro, Do the Macorona. It's published by Jacana. It's available all over the place. You have no excuse. and seeing that this chat we're doing just before Christmas, dash out. Don't go to the corner cafe or to go and buy chocolates at the garage, because people know where that comes from. Do yourself a favor, go out to a bookstore while wearing a mask and hand sanitizing, do all that stuff, buy yourself a copy of this, and it'll give you something to do during the continuing lockdown into 2021. And what's the worst that can happen? It'll teach you to leave your phone in the lounge when you go to the toilet, because you can take this to the toilet with you and have a heck of a lot more fun. Zapiro, otherwise known as Jonathan Shapiro, I wish you all the very, very best for the end of the year. More strength to your pen in 2021. And thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, David. Best to you, and I wish you all the best as well. And did you notice, by the way, I suddenly realized I'm wearing a coronavirus shirt. All the best to everybody.
This has been In Conversation with, I'm David Batsoff, and he's Jonathan Zapiro. And Shapiro, why am I getting this? My tongue is tied. It's the virus. I don't know. Thanks once again to all the viewers for watching, and go out and buy the book.